Today I wanted to take you through a brief presentation that we're calling Calculation Management Done Right. And this is about how to manage all the different mathematics and calculations that go into any design project. So it's probably obvious to many of you, but companies take great steps to invest in their most important assets, and that's really the products that they deliver. And these are really comprised of various designs, techniques, and IP, and they're managed across an organization with careful thought and attention. But often there's like a fundamental process behind these assets, and it's quite often overlooked. And that overlooking is responsible for aches and pains that many of you out there might experience on a regular basis. And that's what we're calling calculation management. And it's a process that treats your calculations like the vital, valuable company assets that they are. And it might sound obvious or it might sound trite, but in our experience working with customers, it really is the case that many people don't take that management of their calculations very seriously. So one way of looking at it is just breaking down engineering as really a series of decisions. And going into those decisions are going to be design requirements, of engineers and designers and the decisions that they make. There's a variety of intellectual property that a company owns that's going to feed into those decisions. There's assumptions along the way, a variety of calculations, and previous knowledge and experience that a company is going to bring to the table. And in every one of these steps, there's valuable intellectual property that can either be managed well or it can be mismanaged. And that'll become more apparent when some maybe challenges to each of these come into play. So if the requirements change, that's going to require some sort of change to the actual IP in the design requirements. There's a personnel change, innovations, and these things go down and down. And it's a process of making good decisions and managing the IP properly that you can be agile when changes do come down the line. So an example would be, let's say an engineer leaves a company, there's a personnel change with a key technical person in your organization. If your calculations are not managed particularly well, or even if they are sometimes, these questions might be relatable to many of you. You might be looking at some of the work that past engineer did. The new person might say, well, who made that particular decision, or what assumptions were used there? They may not be obvious at the time. Well, in what they were doing, did they consider X, Y, or Z? There's a lot of background there that just might be a mystery. So there's a lot of rework to be done, and in almost every field, I think that's pretty relatable. And then there's that sort of missing parameter, or there's that unidentifiable parameter that I'm sure if the other person was still around, it would be easy for them. But the way in which they went about creating their set of useful calculations for the project, it wasn't managed in a way that it could be passed over easily, or that someone could actually trace what they were doing further back into the derivations. So all of this really points to mismanaging how you calculate steps along your design project, really at every step. Although it might seem laborious at points, if these things are mismanaged, there's these micro slowdowns that happen at almost every step of an engineering project. There's a lot of redundancy, a lot of reinventing certain calculations, and it really is possible, especially using modern tools, to take a little bit more time and manage these things well and remove many of those redundancies. And there are a lot of tools out there for calculations. They're really ubiquitous. Let's say we call paper notebooks a tool, but this is a default sort of fallback or usage for many different engineers. It's the easiest way to get your work and ideas out on paper and start building concepts as you move towards the design. The most ubiquitous calculation tool of all are spreadsheet tools, and they're great for so many reasons, but it's very likely that in most industries, because they're the most commonly used tool, of course we're going to try and use that for the widest range of tasks, which may not always be the best choice. And then as you move forward, there's scripting tools to try and automate some of the calculations. But these things can also have shortcomings. How do you update paper notebook scratchpad work, especially if you're trying to have some iteration on your work? the common numeric factor in Excel that you may not be able to really pinpoint where it came from. And let's say you have a scripting problem or a language that you're using. It can be hard to know really if it's applicable to an innovation or a new design because you may not have it either commented properly, or you just may not be able to really see how the script itself came from the concept that you're trying to design. And there can be, significant business impacts to that. If you recall, I think it was 1999, NASA lost something like $125 million because in their Mars orbiter project, there was a misunderstanding in which system of units were being used. So the tools that they were using alongside with Lockheed Martin, their partner, it's likely that there wasn't a very obvious and managed way to bundle units into the calculation work they were doing. So there was a mishap there. Ended up costing a lot of money. So we like to talk about calculation management being done right. And of course, we've got a tool for that, but we try to think beyond that and just think about best practices. So to have calculation management done right, there's some principles that we think through, and it's really treating calculations as a valuable and structured asset. So while there's always going to be space for the back of the napkin style calculations, it's taking a more rigorous approach to understanding that, putting pencil to the paper and putting calculations into some sort of structured program, it's intellectual property that is going to be able to pay forward to a variety of other projects and teams. So there's real value in caring about them, even from square one. And to manage them properly, this involves tracking, validating, and reusing them wherever possible. So it would be great if across an organization you didn't really have to sort of rederive a set of calculations if a couple teams over on a similar project that work's already been done. There's got to be a way to create a repository and to create a structured set of calculations where we don't have to run through the same work over and over. But in our experience with many of the companies we work with, it's 2017 and this is still predominantly what happens. So again, it's preventing redundant calculation work, and it's allowing the calculations themselves and even the tools you make that sit on top of those calculations, the analysis tools, it's allowing people who need them to be able to use them easily. Because there are going to be some people who may not need to understand the derivations that perhaps you did, but they're interested in, say, preparing a quote, or they're interested in just quickly doing a custom order for somebody. And an analysis tool or a quick tool you make might be able to help them do that. And without this attention to creating a well-structured set of calculations, that just might end up bottlenecking the wrong people. So I want to just quickly go over a couple different success stories in some of the organizations we've worked with. And first up here is Hitachi Truck Manufacturing. And they were looking for a tool that could give them ways to optimize certain features in their design, and they needed it to connect better to the reports that they created. So they didn't have to redo the calculation work twice just so it could fit two different deliverables they needed. And so for them, during typical analysis tasks, the engineers would use specific equations to work through design concepts and model their kinematic behavior and analyze the structural integrity over time. And historically, they'd use some spreadsheet programs, but recently they have moved to Maple to reduce the chance of errors and improve calculation efficiency. So they've also been using it to optimize design parameters throughout the whole design process. So they can set up their analysis with an intuitive math input and use built-in functions to automatically solve and simplify that work. And it's reduced many of the possible errors that they had in the past because of the more manual steps that were involved, the more prone it was to human error. But they're now able to create a set of live mathematics that they can always go back and change, and it'll update the whole process along the way. And now they're beginning to integrate Maple into the reporting that they do, because they've got to regularly create those things. So the documentation feature in Maple, it offers all the features necessary for professional reports. So what they're doing in their calculation tool now is not only are they creating a set of mathematics that they can always reference and they can change and have it updated well, but they're using that same tool to create reports for other groups within the organization. So this is a real way to create one unified repository of the most important math they have, and to be able to have it output to a variety of different stakeholders in the company. And another automotive supplier we worked with, they needed a tool that they could specialize through purpose-built little apps for various roles across its organization. They were trying to get those bottlenecks out of the way that I was talking about. So they were looking for a unified set of calculations that they could go and deploy around the organization. They were a bit dissatisfied with their previous calculation management tool. Like I said, these exist, and I'm sure maybe in a different term, many of you use these tools, but we're just thinking about it as not only just a mathematics computation tool, but a whole management set of features. So at this company, the engineers used Maple to explore their design space, and their proposals could be audited since their calculations were fully documented and transparent now. So they really were able to benefit from an easier auditing process, which is very important to this company. The authors of these apps that we talked about, they create highly specialized tools within Maple, and they gave them easier to use interfaces, so the other technical employees didn't really have to see the whole guts of what they had derived, but they were able to get their particular work done. And as we worked with them, the company was telling us that they noticed an increased ability to perform that advanced analysis because they could spread that out to different people. And that was able to preserve, in some sense, the corporate knowledge that these projects contain. They could move them around and use them for future projects. Another company we worked with, this is a diamond mine. They were up in northern Canada. And Diavik Diamond Mine, they were hoping to use better calculation management tools in order to make better forecasts that could be accessed company-wide. So a really important thing for Diavik is to understand, given the inputs into their process, given the just amount of bulk matter input, and a variety of process parameters and variables, they're trying to get an increasingly accurate sense of what their throughput's going to be. And as we talked to them, they had a history of over-reliance on spreadsheet tools, which might be familiar to many of you. It's totally understandable. Still do it here, really. And what they were hoping for is a better solution that could give them an easy way to curve fit with all the variables they had. So they came to us, and we worked with them to provide some software and step them through a little bit of it. And what was happening there was they were able to create a curve-fitting tool that they could use to more easily forecast what they were hoping to get. So all three of these examples, and I touched on it briefly before, has been using our software Maple. And Maple is an end-to-end calculation management tool. And it's a complete environment for developing and managing technical calculations. It gives you powerful tools that help you save time and effort with the right math in place. And as you can see here, it's one part a powerful symbolic computation tool, and there's a variety of powerful symbolic computation tools out there, and we've been working on that engine for about 3 decades. So in addition to being a really robust symbolic tool, all the numerics you could want, we view it in a wider scope. We view it as using all that as the engine to really move the mathematics, but to have this product really work in organizations, we recognize that it needs to go beyond just a mathematical powerhouse. So we've included a variety of analysis tools, and they're supported by advanced analysis options at the click of a mouse, so to make things a bit easier and more streamlined. And the workflow it's fully transparent and documented, So we believe that's really important because it preserves natural math notation. So if you're used to the handheld back the napkin type work, it certainly looks just like that. So we're trying to remove all those barriers that people experience when trying to put their mathematical and almost creative design work into a program. We want that to feel natural so that it can be effective. And to have it fully documented just means you don't have to go rooting through a file folder next time to try and figure out where it was that you did that work. So it's a really easy way to audit the process as well, and just to validate what you're doing, to go back and make sure everything makes sense. And we spent a lot of time making sure that it can be deployed properly, and making sure that just because you've done a lot of great work in Maple, obviously in an organization, the buck doesn't stop there. And the work that you're doing, it needs to find ways to connect seamlessly with other teams and folks within your team. So we've done a lot of work providing features so you can create simple purpose-built applications that can be deployed even to folks without Maple. Folks who want to just use a web-based Maple player can use some of the features that you make. So that's Maple. We think about it in a pretty wide sense like that. And a little bit about ourselves. We've been talking a bit about Maple, but in terms of the solutions that we offer for industry, we've got Maple. Maple Sim is our modeling and simulation tool, and altogether we have a huge swath of in-house expertise to get folks going. So like I said, it's been about 30 years in the making for us, working on what we believe is really the best calculation tool out there. And over those years, we've worked with a variety of companies, not only trying to provide great tools for them, but really learning about the specific needs that pop up in a variety of industries and how we can cater our tool better over time. Like I just briefly touched on before, our engineering solutions group is our in-house expertise to help get projects moving better when taking on new software like Maple or Maple Sim. Because one of the things that we've come to learn over the years is while it really does pay to evolve your processes and to move into better ways of doing things, of course, in an organization that still has to meet a bottom line, it's hard to change processes. So we've developed this in-house group that's purpose is to make those transitions easier and to get to the results side of the equation as fast as possible. And we do that through training. We do it through maybe developing some of those little applications for you and then training you on how that was done. So we have a wide variety of different services, really just to ease that transition piece, because for so many people, the transition, it's always worth it. But of course, practically, the ROI has to be there. So anything to shorten that time, that's really what our group is all about.